Hey everybody, Jesse with Survival Summit. Tonight we are going to be talking about situational awareness. Our new book, Situational Awareness, Skill That Could Save Your Life, is out today on Amazon. It'll be available on our website soon, but right now it's only available on Amazon. A lot of research went into this book. A good friend of ours, Jake McCluskey, helped us, did a lot of contributions to research and getting some of the fine details down. Jake is a Navy veteran. This was co-written by myself, as well as Scott Scooter Brown from the Scooter Brown Band. And for those of you who don't know, he is a co-owner of Survival Summit now, and we're really looking forward to a lot of great things with Scooter Brown. So I'm going to read a little bit of one of the chapters from the new book. Your Brain Under Stress and How Awareness Changes the Outcome. The Physiology of Fear. Fear is not weakness. It's not cowardice. And it's certainly not irrational. Fear is the most ancient, reliable survival system the human body possesses. It's a full body, full brain response designed to keep you alive when everything around you says you might not be. Understanding how fear works, physiologically, psychologically, and behaviorally, is not about suppressing it. It's about mastering it. Because in any life-threatening situation, your ability to regulate your internal state will be just as critical as your ability to assess external threats. The moment your brain perceives danger, real or imagined, it fires a powerful alarm. That alarm originates deep in the brain's limbic system, specifically in an almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. This tiny organ plays an outsized role in your survival. When it detects a threat, it doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for the rational thought. It bypasses logic entirely and initiates what's commonly known as fight, flight, or freeze. In evolutionary times, this is exactly what kept our ancestors alive when they heard the rustler of a predator in the brush, or smelled smoke on the wind. But in the modern world, the same system can become a liability if you don't understand it. Here's what happens in your body the moment fear hits. Your hypothalamus sends signals down your spinal cord to your adrenal glands. In response, those glands release a flood of hormones, primarily adrenaline and cortisol. Adrenaline, also called epinephrine, speeds everything up. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing accelerates, your muscles tense, and your pupils dilate. Cortisol, sometimes called the stress hormone, helps regulate your metabolism and suppresses non-essential functions like digestion and immune response to free up energy. Your blood is redirected from your internal organs to your large muscle groups, your thighs, calves, chest, and back, because those muscles you need to run or fight. Your body is now primed for action, but there's a cost. Fine motor skills, those delicate movements required for tasks like turning a key, typing, or handling small objects, deteriorate rapidly under stress. Your ability to think linearly degrades as blood flow is reduced to the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that is responsible for reasoning and decision-making. In its place, the brain defaults to a reactive pattern and well-worn habits. That's why in high-stress moments, people often report feeling like maybe they blacked out or can't remember what they did. They didn't disappear. They simply surrendered to reflex. This is where situational awareness training becomes critical. You cannot access complex reasoning when your body believes it's dying. But you can fall back on practiced responses. This is why elite military units train movement and decision-making under stress, because the goal isn't to remove fear, but to function effectively in spite of it. One of the most profound effects of fear is something called perceptual narrowing. This is when your senses begin to tunnel. Your vision focuses tightly on the perceived threat, often to the exclusion of everything else. Your hearing may dull or shift, a phenomenon called auditory exclusion, where loud sounds become muted or certain frequencies are lost entirely. In extreme cases, time itself can feel distorted. Survivors of traumatic incidents often report the sensation that events occurred in slow motion, even though in reality, it was just the opposite. This is the brain's attempt to process vast amounts of high-priority data as quickly and accurately as possible. These effects are not imaginary, they are measurable. In a study conducted by the U.S. Army Research Institute, soldiers undergoing live-fire training reported significant perceptual changes, including tunnel vision, muffled hearing, and altered time perception. Their marksmanship and communication abilities suffered significantly unless those stress responses had been trained for and accounted for in advance. What this shows us is that the body under threat will always prioritize survival over sophistication. Unless you've trained to counter it, your awareness will shrink, not expand, when you need it most. Even your posture changes under fear. Your shoulders lift, your breathing shifts from the diaphragm to the chest, and your head may drop slightly. These changes are subtle but important. They influence how you move, how you communicate, and how you are perceived by others. This is the one reason trained professionals like SWAT teams, security contractors, or executive protection agents spend so much time on breath work and body mechanics. By controlling posture and breath, they send messages to their own nervous systems. I am calm. I am ready. I am in control. Another crucial aspect of fear is its impact on memory. In some cases, traumatic fear can enhance memory. This is called flashbulb memory, where every detail of the event is burned into the mind with extraordinary clarity. But in other cases, particularly where fear is combined with confusion or helplessness, memory can become fragmented or even lost entirely. Victims of violence often report remembering isolated moments, a smell, a scream, a blur of movement, but not the full timeline of events. That is not weakness. It's how the brain triages overwhelming input. Training helps combat this by reinforcing structure and sequence even under pressure. When people fail to act in an emergency, it's often not because they don't care or don't understand what's happening. It's because fear has hijacked their executive function. In aviation psychology, this is sometimes referred to as the startle effect. A pilot who's surprised by a sudden system failure may lose precious seconds, not because they lack skill, but because their brain is momentarily overwhelmed by sensory input and emotional shock. The same applies to civilians. You might know where the exit is, but if you're frozen by panic, you might not move. You might see the car coming, but if your brain can't process the trajectory in time, you'll hesitate. That hesitation, born from untrained fear, can be fatal. Fear also creates a powerful feedback loop. Once you sense danger, your body reacts. That reaction creates physical sensations: racing heart, shallow breath, tingling extremities. Those sensations reinforce the belief that you are in danger, which increases fear, which intensifies the symptoms. This is how panic attacks form. The cycle feeds itself until the body is overwhelmed and the brain shuts down high-level function. The key to taking that loop is interception, using techniques like tactical breathing, posture control, and pattern recognition to reassert control over your internal state. Interestingly, research shows that trained individuals can reverse engineer this loop. In studies conducted on first responders, military personnel, and competitive athletes who engaged in breath control and visualization drills had significantly lower cortisol spikes during high-stress events. They also returned to baseline psychological levels faster after the event. This means that fear is not only trainable, it's recoverable. You can teach your body to enter and exit fear without damage, without panic, and without losing awareness. In fact, some elite performers learn to use fear as fuel. They don't try to suppress it. They don't pretend it's not there. They accept it, and they ride it. That is what allows a firefighter to run to a burning building or a police officer to confront an armed suspect. It's not bravery in the absence of fear. It's competence in spite of fear. And that competence is built over time through exposure, rehearsal, and recovery. It's worth noting that fear doesn't always present as terror. Sometimes it shows up as hesitation, as self-doubt, as a tight throat or a sudden need to justify your actions to others. In survival situations, especially those involving social pressure, like calling out suspicious behavior or removing your family from a location, you may feel a fear of embarrassment or overreaction. This kind of fear is just as dangerous because it delays action, and delay is where danger lives. Part of your awareness training must include learning to recognize that fear, label it, and move anyway. Not recklessly, but decisively. Understanding your own fear patterns is essential. Some people freeze, some flee, others become aggressive. Knowing your tendency allows you to counter it before it controls you. In law enforcement training, officers are taught to identify their primary fear response and develop specific counter drills to ensure performance doesn't degrade under pressure. You can do the same. If you know you tend to freeze, practice quick decision drills. If you need to escalate quickly, practice breath work and de-escalation scripts. The better you know yourself under pressure, the less likely you are to be owned by fear when it matters most. Children also experience fear responses but often lack the vocabulary to express them. Teaching them to recognize fear as data, not shame, is a gift that will serve them for life. When a child says, "I feel weird," don't brush it off. Help them identify what's triggering that feeling. Was it someone's behavior, a sound, a sensation in their body? This trains the awareness loop early. Observe, orient, decide, act. The OODA loop. The goal isn't to make them fearless, it's to make them resilient. The same applies to adults in professional settings. A nurse who recognizes early signs of shock in a patient doesn't panic. She acts. A teacher who sees fear in a student's eyes during a lockdown drill doesn't freeze. She leads. A traveler who notices tension in a crowd doesn't ignore it. He adjusts. All of these actions stem from one shared truth: awareness of fear, your own and others. It's a superpower when trained and a liability when ignored. Lastly, it's important to understand that fear is not always a signal to stop. In fact, the presence of fear may mean you're paying attention. Fear tells you something important is happening, that you're entering terrain that matters, that you're standing at a threshold of risk and responsibility. The goal isn't to eliminate that signal, it's to translate it, to listen, and then to lead. So, what does fear really do to you? It prepares you, it narrows you, it challenges you. It tests whether your awareness is real or theoretical, whether your calm is earned or imagined, and whether your training was just practice or preparation. The physiology of fear doesn't care about your intentions. It only cares about outcomes. You either control it or it controls you. In a crisis, you won't have time to negotiate with your body. You'll perform exactly as you've trained. Train for fear, not in spite of it, but with it. All right, we're going to skip around a little bit and let's see. Go to a couple different chapters, read a couple paragraphs. Of course, I'm not going to read too much of the book because it just came out. I don't want to give it all away. Although it is 528 pages, so it's pretty unlikely that I would be able to give it all away. This could probably take 12 hours if I was going to try to read this, so that's not going to happen. A little bit of Chapter 5, Reading People in Motion, Body Language, and Pre-Attack Indicators. The silent signals that shout. Most people think danger announces itself loudly, with yelling, chaos, or threats. But the truth is, danger usually whispers. The human body telegraphs its intentions through hundreds of tiny shifts before violence erupts. If you know how to read these signals, you can buy time. Time to reposition. Time to avoid. Time to act. This section is about reading those early whispers, the subtle cues that scream the truth beneath a calm surface. Words can be polished, rehearsed, and deceptive. The body, by contrast, leaks honesty. Someone can say, "I'm fine," while balling their fist and tightening their jaw. They can promise, "I'm not a threat," while scanning for exits and shifting their stance to a bladed posture. The difference between words and movement is the difference between a mask and a window. Trained observers don't just listen with their ears, they read the room with their eyes, scanning for those silent tells that often shout the loudest. These cues, called pre-assault indicators in law enforcement, are unconscious behaviors tied to adrenaline, decision-making, and internal conflict. A would-be attacker doesn't raise a weapon out of nowhere. First, they might fidget. Their breath changes, their gaze becomes fixed or erratic, they adjust their waistband or their jacket, their posture stiffens, they rock forward slightly, preparing to close distance. These moments don't last long, but they are there, and the trained observer catches them. To understand these signals, we need to start with a concept you've seen throughout this book: baseline and anomaly. Baseline is what normal looks like in any given environment. At a cafe, people drink coffee, talk quietly, sometimes, check their phones. If someone starts pacing, avoiding eye contact, clenching or unclenching their fist, that's an anomaly. In a grocery store, people meander, push carts, and glance at produce. If someone is walking quickly between aisles, tracking another person without a cart, or hovering at entrances, that's an anomaly. You don't need to panic at every anomaly, but you must acknowledge it. One strange behavior may mean nothing, but a cluster of them tells a story. Let's break down what those clusters often include. One of the most basic and telling signals is weight shifting. When someone prepares for physical action, whether it's a punch or a sprint, their body often shifts subtly. They may bounce on the balls of their feet, roll their shoulders, or blade their stance, turning slightly so one side is forward. This repositions their body for power and stability. It's not done consciously. It's the body's way of getting ready. And once you start looking for it, you'll see it everywhere just before things go wrong. Another key cue is target glancing. Before someone acts, they often check the space around them. This could include looking around to see if witnesses are nearby, confirming where exits are, or ensuring their escape route is clear. They might glance at a weapon hidden under clothing or at the person they intend to approach. These glances aren't casual. They're purposeful and quick. If you see someone repeatedly scanning their surroundings in a context that doesn't match, say someone watching others in a waiting room or checking the corner of a park with no obvious reason, that's a signal worth clocking. Hands are also a major giveaway. Humans instinctively protect the things they're focused on. If someone keeps one hand in a pocket, waistband, or hoodie pouch, even while indoors or during conversation, that's a potential red flag. It could be hiding a weapon, or it could be simply a self-soothing behavior. Context matters, but when combined with other cues, tense posture, fixed gaze, unusual silence, hidden hands should raise your alertness. Law enforcement trainers often say, "Watch the hands, they hurt you first." Facial tension is another silent shout. Look for clenching of the jaw, flaring of the nostrils, squinting, or forced smiles. These are signs that the person is under emotional pressure, anger, fear, or aggression barely contained. A relaxing face has softness and motion. A face locked in tension tells you the person is trying hard to control themselves. When someone's face no longer matches the situation, for instance, if they're expressionless in a joyful environment, it can be a clue their mind is elsewhere, possibly planning. Stiffness is also a powerful indicator. In a moving crowd or casual environment, people flow. When someone suddenly becomes still, stops mid-step, or freezes in an otherwise dynamic space, it's often because their mind was locked onto a decision. This is known as the freeze before the flight moment. The body stops moving because the mind is aligning focus and breath for action. You see this in surveillance footage before fights, stabbings, or ambushes. Stiffness, in this context, is not peace, it's prep. To train yourself to see these signals, you need to spend time observing people, but not in moments of crisis. Watch how people move when they're relaxed, neutral, or happy. Study the baseline of calm. How do people stand when they're unthreatened? What does the relaxed eye contact look like? How does someone's posture change when they're simply waiting versus when they're watching? By internalizing this normal, your brain becomes more attuned to changes. You don't have to memorize hundreds of cues. You just have to learn how to spot the shift. In one case, a young woman riding a train noticed a man who hadn't stopped looking at her reflection in the window. Every time she moved, he mirrored her, leaning in, adjusting his stance, faking casual interest. But what told her something was off was his stillness. He didn't check his phone, he didn't adjust his posture, he didn't blink often. That unnatural control, that lack of ambient motion, told her he was focused on her, not on his own space. She got off 2 stops earlier, reported the behavior, and learned later that the man had been reported before for stalking. Her attention to stillness, an anomaly, was her edge. Recognizing these cues is not about paranoia. It's about presence. Aware people don't live in fear. They live with clarity. They trust their senses. They give themselves options, and when they see something that breaks pattern, they don't ignore it. They adjust their position, change their path, slow their approach, or increase distance. These are micro decisions, small actions made early, and they are the essence of survival. All right, let's flip to another chapter. I don't want to read too much from each chapter. Kind of want to give you an overview of a lot of the stuff that's in the book. Again, this is 528 pages. This took quite a while to put together, but of course we had multiple people working on it, and it's actually now launched today, which is much earlier than we had anticipated. Chapter 7, De-escalation Tactics, Verbal, Emotional, and Physical Soft Skills. Understanding the Psychology of Escalation. To understand how to stop a threat before it becomes dangerous, you first have to understand what danger looks like in the early stages. Rarely does violence or confrontation explode out of nowhere. Most of the time, it bubbles up through emotional shifts, social missteps, unresolved tension, and psychological buildup that gets ignored or misread until it's too late. Escalation is not a mystery. It's a process. And once you know what to look for, you can interrupt that process at multiple points, long before things get critical. Escalation at its core is the movement from a low-intensity emotional state to a high-intensity one. It can involve anger, fear, frustration, humiliation, or even perceived injustice. Whether it plays out in a personal argument, a public altercation, or violent crime, the arc is similar. There's a trigger. Then there's a reaction. That reaction provokes another reaction. Tension rises. Options narrow. Eventually, one or both parties act out in a way that shifts the situation into confrontation or full-blown violence. The more you understand the arc, the more influence you gain over it. A major factor in escalation is emotional dysregulation, the inability to manage rising internal pressure. Neuroscience explains this in terms of the limbic system and prefrontal cortex. The limbic system, especially the amygdala, governs emotional responses like fear and anger. The prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive center, is responsible for logic, decision-making, and impulse control. Under stress, especially in the presence of perceived threat or disrespect, the limbic system hijacks the brain's processing. This is often called the amygdala hijack, a term coined by psychologist Daniel Goleman. In this state, the person's ability to weigh consequences, read social cues, or process alternative solutions drops sharply. Once a person has entered this state, they become reactive. The threshold for further escalation lowers. Small provocations now feel like major offenses. Eye contact becomes threatening. Tone of voice sounds disrespectful. Movement feels aggressive. From the outside, the person may appear irrational, but internally, their nervous system is trying to protect them through dominance, flight, or defensive aggression. This isn't limited to people predisposed to violence. Everyone escalates under the right or wrong conditions. Studies in complex psychology show that environmental stressors, noise, heat, crowding, personal triggers, insults, perceived threats to status, and psychological factors like fatigue, hunger, and alcohol all reduce emotional bandwidth and raise the likelihood of escalation. What was tolerable at 9 a.m. might be intolerable at 6 p.m. after a stressful day. Context matters. All right, let's skip around one more time. Let's see what we got here. What do I want to read you next? All right, we'll read a little bit of Chapter 10, Situational Awareness for Everyday Life, bringing tactical awareness into civilian environments. Situational awareness is often packaged as a combat skill reserved for military units, law enforcement, or high-risk professions. But in reality, the environments where awareness is most often needed aren't battlegrounds, they're everyday spaces. Grocery stores, parking lots, apartment buildings, sidewalks. The skills that keep soldiers alive in hostile zones are the same ones that help civilians avoid conflict, prevent accidents, and respond decisively when seconds count. Tactical awareness isn't something you carry only when the world goes sideways. It's something you build into how you move, think, and live every day. To understand how tactical awareness applies to civilian life, first we have to redefine what a threat is. In the civilian world, it isn't always a person with a weapon or an overt act of aggression. A threat could be someone following you too closely in a parking lot, could be an aggressive driver weaving through traffic, could be a structure fire, a gas leak, a suspicious package in a crowd, or even a conversation turned heated in public. These threats often appear subtly, wrapped in the ordinary, and they're easy to miss when your attention is buried in a phone, lost in thought, or dulled by routine. The first enemy of awareness in daily life is autopilot. Most people move through their routines without thinking. They walk into buildings, navigate stores, drive familiar routes with their minds elsewhere. This mental fog creates vulnerabilities. It's what predators look for. It's also what leads to poor decisions, accidents, and missed warning signs. Tactical awareness is about breaking that fog and choosing to be present. Not hypervigilant, not paranoid, just engaged. That engagement begins with the environment. Civilian spaces, especially those that are familiar, can lull you into complacency. But every space you enter has a structure, a rhythm, and a baseline. When you walk into the gas station, a cafe, or a shopping center, you should ask simple but vital questions. Where are the exits? Who's in here? What are they doing? How do they look? Are they calm, agitated, distracted? These aren't judgmental questions. They're baseline checks. The more you build this habit, the more anomalies will begin to stand out. Anomaly detection is one of the core functions of situational awareness. In technical terms, you are building a mental map of what's normal so you can identify what's not. A person pacing instead of shopping, someone standing too close to others without a reason, a car parked in the same spot for hours, a person watching but not interacting. These are signals. Alone, they may mean nothing, but together they form patterns, and your brain, when trained, starts to flag them early. To make this real, imagine walking through a parking lot. You're returning to your car with your groceries. Most people are focused downward, on their keys, on their phone, thinking about their schedule. But the situationally aware person walks with their head up. They scan. They note cars that are running without drivers. They glance at people sitting in parked vehicles. They walk with purpose and know the location of the closest lights and exits. This simple awareness reduces your profile as a target and increases your readiness to react if something feels off. Tactical awareness also helps you manage personal interactions. In social settings, especially crowded or emotionally charged ones, awareness becomes emotional radar. You can feel the tension in a room before it becomes visible. You can detect someone moving aggressively, speaking with anger, or postured for control. These cues help you shift positions, move away, redirect, or de-escalate before things spiral. The key here is that awareness doesn't just help you see faster, it helps you move sooner. The earlier you detect a change in environment or human behavior, the more options you have. If you don't notice the shift until there's someone shouting or there's violence, your options shrink to fight or flight. But if you notice the tension 2 minutes earlier, you can exit, divert, or prepare with clarity. Integrating tactical awareness into everyday life is more about consistency than it is complexity. You don't need to memorize everything or run scenario drills in every hallway. What you do need is a handful of core behaviors. Walk with your head up. Scan a space before you commit to a task. Note who enters and exits. Position yourself near exits, not in corners. Stay aware of what's happening behind and beside you. Check reflective surfaces when walking or waiting. Use your ears. Listen to tone, rhythm, and silence. Over time, these actions become second nature. They don't take extra effort. They become your baseline operating mode. You learn to shift between focus and observation fluidly. You sip coffee and check exits. You talk with a friend and monitor who just walked in. The great misconception is that awareness requires energy. In truth, once it's trained, awareness conserves energy. It prevents you from being surprised, rushed, or caught unprepared. It turns you from a passive bystander into an active observer. Awareness is also a communication tool. In family life, your awareness becomes a model. Your children watch how you move, how you respond, how you lead. If you're checking surroundings calmly before entering a building, they absorb that. If you take a breath before making a decision under pressure, they absorb that too. Your habits become their survival baseline. You don't have to lecture them on stranger danger if they've seen you spot and avoid sketchy situations without panic. For couples or teams, shared awareness enhances safety. One person scans left, the other scans right. One person notes exits, the other watches the people. You move with unity like a trained unit, even if you've never worn a uniform. This is especially important when traveling, navigating crowds, or attending events. A team that shares awareness increases the margin for error. One pair of eyes is good. Two that are in sync are better. Even solo, the skills scale. One person with awareness can guide a room, can spot trouble and pull others away, can de-escalate a conversation before it boils over, can redirect a stranger, ask the right question, or call for help early enough to matter. In this way, situational awareness becomes a form of quiet leadership. You don't have to wear a badge to be the calm in the storm. Situational awareness at home. Most people think of home as the final destination, the place you retreat to when the world outside feels uncertain or overwhelming. But for all the comfort and security your home provides, they can also become zones of dangerous complacency. If you drop your guard at the threshold, you may be giving up the very awareness you spent a lifetime to develop. True situational awareness doesn't stop at your front door. In fact, that's where it should start. Awareness at home means understanding your physical layout, your vulnerabilities, your routines, and your people. It's not about becoming paranoid or living in a fortress. It's about knowing your space well enough that when something's out of place, you feel it instantly. You shouldn't need an alarm system to tell you something's off. You should be able to notice it with your senses first, because you've trained yourself to pay attention. Start with your home's perimeter, regardless of whether you live in a suburban house, an apartment complex, or a rural cabin. There are key questions to answer. Where are the entry points? What can be seen from the street? Are bushes or vehicles blocking sight lines? Are cameras, lights, and locks positioned where they're most effective? More than one home invasion has succeeded because of the gate left open or a broken light that nobody bothered to fix. These oversights compound when you assume you're safe here. You are, but only if you maintain that safety. Having a nightly lockdown routine isn't obsessive, it's responsible. Just as pilots run pre-flight checklists, homeowners should run evening security sweeps. Are the doors locked? Are the windows secure? Garage closed? Exterior lights, are they all working? It takes less than 2 minutes to check, and that check gives you control. You don't need to worry about the what if when you've already confirmed the what is. It's also important to think of layered defense. Locks are a physical layer. Lights are a deterrent. Dogs, cameras, fences. These are all barriers that either slow or dissuade access. But your awareness is the living layer, the one that adjusts and responds. When you hear a noise at 2 a.m., it's your awareness that determines whether you panic, freeze, or investigate with calm efficiency. That outcome is decided long before the noise ever happens through mental preparation and consistent practice. Another overlooked aspect of home awareness is your routine. Criminals, especially opportunist or repeat offenders, don't act randomly. They watch patterns. They notice when you leave for work, when packages are left outside, when the lights are off, the same time each night. To counter that, vary your patterns occasionally. Use timers on lights. Park differently once in a while. These are micro adjustments that add friction to any potential threat that could be planning against you. Then there's behavioral awareness. This isn't just about strangers, it's about what happens inside your home. If you live with others, spouses, children, roommates, you are their first line of observation. Are they behaving normally? Is someone unusually quiet, anxious, irritable, or evasive? Situational awareness in the home includes emotional intelligence. A sudden change in sleep patterns, eating habits, or engagement might mean something deeper is going on. Your alertness can become a source of care and intervention, not just defense. Neighbors are part of this ecosystem too. Most people wave, exchange a few words, and think nothing of it. But being aware of your community means knowing who belongs and who doesn't. If you live in an apartment building, you should be able to recognize familiar faces and familiar patterns. A stranger lingering near mailboxes or entering behind someone else could be casing units. If you live in a neighborhood, note who drives what, when construction is happening, and when deliveries usually arrive. These mental snapshots allow you to spot anomalies with ease. Packages, for example, are now a vulnerability point in many households. Porch pirates thrive on predictable delivery patterns and distracted homeowners. Installing a camera helps, but awareness fills the gap. Do you know when deliveries are expected? Can you see your front steps from inside? Are packages sitting visibly for others? Reducing obvious opportunities is part of proactive awareness. I think, not going to read any more of the book because yes, it is 529 pages, so there's no way I can give away too much of it. But there are a lot of different drills in here, it's going to teach you some breathing exercises. It's going to teach you a lot of different drills, like memorization drills. There is a ton of information packed in this book. And it's $29.95. Same price as the 9 Pillars of Preparedness that we put out a couple weeks ago. And a little bit more. This is $24.95. Pace Planning. This came out at the end of January of this year. And we co-wrote a book with E.J. Snyder, Emergency Home Preparedness. So all 4 of these books are available on Amazon. Make sure you guys check them out. And if you're looking to do any virtual training, Survival Summit has 40 plus hours of instructional training on our website. The link is in our bio, or you can go to thesurvivalsummit.com. Until the next time, one last thing. You know what? I was going to tease what book's coming out next, but it's actually a different version, a much shorter version of Situational Awareness. But I'm not going to tease it any more than that, but it's going to be really cool, and I think you guys are really going to like it. All right, till the next time, take it easy, stay safe, and be situationally aware.